All right, let's dive in. Today, Wednesday, July 2nd, Netflix just dropped a really big one.
Yeah, a highly anticipated sequel. It's a follow-up to a film that, really resonated with people back in 2020.
It really did, especially during, well, that unique time. So for this deep dive, we're cutting straight to the chase on The Old Guard 2.
That's right. The next chapter in the action saga, based on the graphic novel series.
And our mission today is to dig into a detailed review we found from The Hollywood Reporter.
Exactly. We want to unpack what this sequel brings, how it measures up against the first one.
And maybe find some specific details that might surprise you, or just inform you if you're a fan, or even just curious about this whole world of immortal soldiers.
We'll pull out the key nuggets so you're basically up to speed.
Absolutely. So before we jump into the new one, maybe it's worth just quickly touching on why that original 2020 Old Guard felt like such a, well, a welcome surprise.
Yeah, good idea. It really showed that hard-charging action and, emotionally textured drama don't have to be separate things.
Right, they can coexist.
Totally. And the review points out its strengths weren't just the fight scenes, though they were impressive. MMA, knives, swords.
Bronze Age axes, even.
Right. But also that kind of soulful interiority of the characters. Their immortality wasn't just cool powers. It meant this aching solitude and loss.
Yeah.
The film really explored that.
And a huge part of that was Gina Prince Bythewood's direction. The review mentions her commanding presence.
Yeah, commanding direction.
Yeah.
It highlighted her sort of muscularity in the action sequences,
Mm-hmm.
but also the genuine emotional depth in the story beats. That balance, it seems, was just critical.
It really felt like the linchpin. Okay, so turning to the sequel, The Old Guard 2, what are the basics? Rating, runtime.
Okay, so it's rated R, clocks in at 1 hour and 45 minutes. And as we said, it dropped today, July 2nd, 2025, on Netflix.
Got it. And who's back from the original crew? And are there any interesting new faces joining the immortal fray?
Yep, the core team's back. Charlize Theron as Annie, of course.
Mhm.
Kiki Lane as Niall. Matthias Schoenaerts returns as Booker. And Marwan Kenzari and Luca Marinelli are back as Joe and Nikki, the beloved couple.
Great. New faces.
We get Uma Thurman stepping in as a character named Discord. Henry Golding plays someone called Tua. And Veronica Van is Quinn.
Quinn, wasn't she mentioned or briefly seen in the first one, the one trapped underwater?
That's the one. We'll definitely get into her more. And a key change this time. The director is Victoria Mahoney.
Right. She handled second unit on Rise of Skywalker, among other things, so a different perspective behind the camera.
Exactly. Which leads into the critical assessment.
Yeah, that observation about it maybe missing the secret sauce of the original director. That's
Yeah.
intriguing. What do they mean by that, do you think?
Well, it's a crucial question, isn't it? The review suggests that while the sequel has most of the same elements, the action, the returning cast,
Mm-hmm.
it seems to be missing something. That secret sauce might be that unique blend Prince Bythewood brought. That specific way she balanced the raw action with the character's internal stuff.
The why behind their fighting, the cost of it all.
Exactly. It's not just about being competent, which the review implies Mahoney is. It's about that distinct fingerprint.
Okay. But it does say it's never dull, and fans will likely stay the course.
Right. So it's not a disaster by any means. Just
Yeah.
maybe doesn't quite recapture that initial magic.
Gotcha. But okay, despite those initial thoughts, the review apparently highlights a really spectacular opening scene. Sounds like it starts strong.
Oh, yeah. It describes the opening as the most exhilarating action set piece in the whole film. It's set at this magnificent villa on the Croatian coast,
Nice.
though apparently it was actually shot on Lake Como in Italy. Looks gorgeous, I bet.
And what happens in this scene? What makes it so good?
Well, you've got Andy finding a hefty sword, just hanging on a wall convenient.
Okay.
Then Joe and Nikki pull off this pulse-racing car chase in 2 vintage sports cars while being pursued.
Ooh, nice touch with the vintage car.
Yeah. And then Niall makes a pretty spectacular entrance, abandoning her lookout post on a boat. Sounds like a really well-orchestrated sequence.
So the review praises the collaboration there. Director, DP, stunts.
Exactly. Mahoney, cinematographer Barry Ackroyd, fight choreographer Georgi Manchev, the cast, the stunt crew, everyone working at the top of their game for that opening.
Okay, promising start then. And then you mentioned Quinn returning,
Mhm.
the character with that truly horrifying backstory. How does she fit in?
Right. Quinn, Andy's former beloved companion from centuries ago. Her return is a huge emotional driver for the plot.
Remind us again, she was condemned for witchcraft.
Yeah, 500 years ago, buried alive at sea in an iron casket, wrapped in chains, constantly regenerating and drowning for 5 centuries. Just awful.
Ugh. So her return is fueled by revenge.
Pretty much. Hatred for humanity, definitely.
Yeah.
But also this deep rage, specifically at Andy, who, promised they'd phase everything together and then couldn't find her.
Wow, heavy stuff. The review also mentioned the script fills in some blanks about the immortality itself.
Yeah, it apparently deftly fills in the blanks about how an immortal can become mortal, which is obviously huge for Andy now, and also how surrendered power might be bestowed on someone else. Important lore details.
Interesting. Okay, and speaking of expanding the lore, these new characters, Tua and Discord, tell us about them.
So Henry Golding plays Tua. He's an old friend of Andy's who kind of dropped out of the soldiering life.
Okay.
He decided instead to devote himself to documenting the Immortals' place in history. His work actually connects to Copley's research from the first movie.
Ah, building the mythology. And Uma Thurman's character, Discord.
Right. She's initially introduced as this unidentified woman who stole Tua's research, his historical volumes.
Okay.
But we learn she's also an immortal, one whose existence might even predate Andy's. She's been living in the shadows for centuries, building up like untold wealth and power.
And now she's using Quinn.
Seems like it. Using Quinn as a way to get to Andy and the others.
Okay, so lots of moving parts. With all this going on, how do the core characters evolve? Booker, for instance, he was exiled. How's his return handled?
Yeah, Booker's return and how the group accepts him back or deals with it leads to some affecting developments for his character, according to the review.
Yeah.
Sounds like a significant arc for him.
Good. And Andy and Niall, their dynamic was central to the first film.
It evolves here, too. There's apparently a new warmth and humor in their rapport. Niall seems more accepting of Andy's mentorship now.
Nice.
And Andy gets this great deadpan line, "I'm mortal, but I'm not retired."
Ah, love that. That really sums her up. What about the big confrontation? Andy versus Quinn must be intense.
Oh, yeah. The review calls their fight scene in a Rome alley electrifying. It's apparently loaded with all that emotional baggage and guilt between them.
And the physicality, is it gritty like the first film?
Sounds like it. It emphasizes the physicality on body against body, using guns, knives, other blades. Both films seem to share that strength, making injuries feel painful, even for immortals. This fight sounds particularly impactful because of their history.
Makes sense. Okay, and then there's Joe and Nikki. Their centuries-long relationship is such a cornerstone.
It really is. A tender note of queer affirmation, as the review puts it. They've always had each other, which spares them some of the deep loneliness the others face.
Do they get much action this time, besides the car chase?
The review notes they're actually underutilized in the action scenes outside that opening.
Ah, okay.
But their hangout scenes are still described as deeply pleasurable. You get these sweet moments, like them staggering off to bed, or Joe playfully teasing Nikki about his snoring after drinking.
Little human moments.
Exactly. Though the critic does seem a bit annoyed about one scene. It's an intimate moment, building maybe towards a kiss, but it just ends with them nuzzling foreheads.
Ah, the review actually said boo.
Yep. Clearly wanted more there. It just shows how invested people get in them, right?
Totally. Okay, so moving towards the end, the climax shifts location.
Yeah, the climactic stretch moves to a Chinese-run secret nuclear facility in Indonesia, rigged with explosive. Standard stuff.
Naturally. And this sets up the big face-off everyone's probably waiting for.
You'd think so. The inevitable Andy versus Discord showdown. Charlize Theron, Fury Road, Atomic Blonde.
Against Uma Thurman, Kill Bill's Black Mamba.
Exactly. It's a matchup that promises fireworks.
Oh, high sense of butt coming.
Yeah. Sadly, the review explicitly mentions that this highly anticipated fight actually underwhelms.
Oh, that's a shame. So, putting it all together, what's the final verdict from The Hollywood Reporter on The Old Guard 2?
Overall, it's judged as a better-than-average original streaming feature. Solid. It's well acted by a highly capable cast, and it's peppered with enough action to satisfy most appetites.
So, decent action, good performances.
Right. And importantly, it still has that melancholy vein, that introspection about what it means to be these sort of conflicted superhero figures. That deeper theme is still present.
Elevates it a bit beyond just explosions.
For sure. And no huge surprise here, there's a cliffhanger ending that clearly signals a third movie is planned.
Right, setting up the next chapter. Maybe saving the truly epic showdowns for then.
Could be. Seems likely they're playing the long game.
Okay. So, wrapping this up for you, our listener, The Old Guard 2 sounds like a sequel that, maybe doesn't quite hit the exact same highs as the original, especially with the change in director,
Yeah, perhaps missing a bit of that unique spark.
but it still delivers solid action, keeps developing these characters we care about, and expands the world in interesting ways. Sounds like a worthwhile watch, especially if you liked the first one.
Definitely. And this whole deep dive really highlights how, even for immortals, loss and emotional challenges are constant. It makes you think, what does this film's take on mortality and loss, even in an immortal context, really say about our own existence, however long we live?
That's a deep question. Or maybe think about this, considering that critique we discussed. What do you think is the most crucial ingredient for a truly great sequel? Is it sticking with the original director's vision, no matter what? Or is it more about letting the characters and the world continue to evolve, even if it feels a bit different?
Good question. Something to chew on.
Definitely something to reflect on as you maybe decide whether to check out The Old Guard too.